If you have ever applied for a loan to purchase real estate, vehicles, or any other asset involving finances, you have signed a promissory note. If you own a house and you ever borrowed money against it, a line of credit is a HELOC, homeowner's equity line of credit, then you signed a promissory note. And today we're going to talk about buying, selling, creating promissory notes, buying real estate with promissory notes, and just doing business of the investment in notes, buying notes, selling notes, trading notes, discounting notes. And so that is a very big business, and we buy and sell promissory notes. Now, promissory notes all have either a deed of trust or a mortgage, and depending on which state you're in. And if you're in Colorado, then it's a deed of trust state. And so the deed of trust is recorded at the courthouse for the beneficiary. And so you've got the payer and the payee and the beneficiary. Now, if the person that's paying the note does not pay the payments, then you can request that the public trustee sell the property. And usually the person paying the notes will either go get a new loan and pay you off, or they will refinance the property or do something. But there's just millions and millions of notes out there, and a note is nothing more than a promise to pay. And so there are just millions of these liens against property, and for most all liens, there's usually a corresponding promissory note. And even a judgment is a lien, and a judgment can be bought and sold and traded. And I go to meetings with real estate brokers that's part of their business model, is they sell judgments as well as promissory notes secured by mortgages or deeds of trust. So the thing that I find very interesting are these promissory notes are sold and discounted. And that's not a very hard concept to understand. I mean, you've got a promissory note that's, say, paying 4, 5, or 6%. And that seems like a pretty fair rate. It's probably not a very good rate if you're financing the property. Banks and FHA and those lenders will finance property at 100% loan to value or 3% or more. And so the borrower has very little equity in that property. And that can be a danger sign. They might have the ability to pay, but when things get rough and tough, a lot of times if you have no equity in a property, you just walk away. And that can be a problem. For private lenders and people that buy promissory notes and deeds of trust, they require more loan to value. In other words, it's called protective equity, or the margin of safety. If you put down 3%, that's just not much equity and people will walk. But if you put down 10 or 15 or 20% or 30%, then you're less likely to leave that equity and walk away from the property when things get rough. And so protective equity is very important. And also what's very important in promissory notes is the position you're in. Now, what you don't want to do is be in second or third position. Now, second position may not be bad. Second position is not very bad if you can cure the first. So let's say that you are going to loan money on a piece of property, and it's $300,000 property, and there's $200,000 in front of you, $200,000 in first position. And let's say the person needs $25,000 or $50,000, and you're going to loan money against that property. Now we're talking about investment property. And so you would figure up your protective equity, which would be the outstanding balance of all the loans. and add those up and see what the loan to value is. And so the real critical thing there is that you need to have the ability to either get a new loan for $200,000 or pay that $200,000 off should the borrower decide to not pay the loan. And so that's why lenders are so cautious about the position they're in. Bank and FHA and HUD and all these people will never go in second position. It's always first position only. There's few extreme circumstances if you have other collateral, but usually people don't. And so the position you're in becomes very critical. And the loan to value is very important. And there are other things that will determine the value of the note. And that would be the payment history of the borrower, the collateral, the type of collateral, its location, its appeal to the market. And so there's a lot of factors to look at when you're looking at a hard money loan or looking at buying a note or selling a note. And you want to be sure that when you're buying a note that it's a good note and you can sell it, and the discount rate is usually more than the interest rate. Let's say that you've got a note that you want to sell and it's 4%. And that's not a bad rate. You can get that about anywhere. But I'm an investor and I've got the money to invest, and you need my money, and my rate is 9 or 10%. And so the time value of money would then be able to come into play. And that's just a formula to figure out what a series of payments are worth at the discount rate of 10%. And that's my yield, and that's what I require. And so it's not a very hard concept to understand. And banks, savings and loan, and all types of lenders, they're very knowledgeable in notes and deeds of trust. But the same process that they do, if you create a note on your property, then you go through the same process. And so it's a good process, and it's been around for years and years, and you do the same thing that a bank does. And so it's often just pretty neat to know that the same thing that they do that we can do, and we can create our own promissory notes and borrow our own equity, as you would say. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you've got a piece of property that's free and clear, and you need some money. Now, you can do 2 or 3 things. You could go to a hard money lender and get the loan pretty easily, and there's probably be about a 50% loan to value. Or you could go to a bank and you might get 70 or 80% loan to value. And you have to do a lot of appraisals and fees and title policies and things like that. That's going to cost you a bunch of money. Or since you've got that equity and you know you can make the payment, you can create your own promissory note and deed of trust. And so you've created a note, say for $150,000. Let's say that is 70% loan to value. And now you want to sell that note, and you've stated an interest rate on there of 6%. Pretty good rate. But now you're going to sell that note to get the cash, but the investor wants 10%. So you discount the note, you get the cash. But the thing about creating your own note is you have to make the payments, or the person that loaned you the money would be able to foreclose against your property. And a lot of times, if you want to buy a piece of property and you want to trade your land for a piece of property, most people don't want the land, but they would look at taking the promissory note because they could also discount that note and sell it. So promissory notes play a big role in financing in the marketplace, and they're a very good way to do business. Now, here's a brochure that my friend Ed put out on Facebook, and it says, "Hey, can I just sell a portion of my mortgage? Can I just sell a portion of the mortgage I own?" And what does he mean by that? That means you have financed a property for somebody, and let's say you've had it for 5 years and they're making payments and they're good payers and there's no problems with the payments, and you need $50,000. What Ed would do would come in and say, okay, you need $50,000. My discount rate is 12%, and your payments are paying $800 a month. So with the time value of money formula, he would figure out at $800 a month at a discount rate of 12%, what it would take, how many months it would take to give you that $50,000. And so what Ed has done is made 12% on his money. You have got the cash. You have kept your promissory note. Ed is getting an assignment of those payments for 2 or 3 years. And then in 2 or 3 years, the loan is paid off and your promissory note comes back to you and you start getting the payments again. So that's a pretty neat process. We buy, sell, and trade promissory notes. If you got a promissory note, we can take it to the marketplace and see what people will pay for it. Or we can use your promissory note to buy other properties. Or you can probably get a hard money loan against that promissory note, depending on all the other factors that come into play. The rate, the term, the yield, the history of the borrower, the history of the property, the collateral. Is it in good position or bad position? Is it good property or bad property, or there's no market for it? So you look at all those things, and the discount rate could go up from there depending on several factors. So I thought that was pretty good that Ed would put that out there, and he's getting that. Is you have to be able to pay them, or otherwise that promissory note is just like this little guy right here. You're carrying a burden around, and that's called the debt. And you own that debt, and you have to pay it, or you would lose your property. So when creating promissory notes and doing business in that fashion, you have to be able to say that you can handle that debt. There. We buy notes plus hard money loans. And another just note, and here's part of my equity marketing, is that there's over 300 ways to buy, sell, and trade real estate. And dealing with notes and creating notes is one way to do that. And I think it's a very good business model, and it works very well in a lot of instances. So if you got a promissory note you want to sell or trade or do something with, or you've got free and clear collateral and you need a hard money loan, then my contact information is on the screen. So thanks for watching the broadcast. And if you didn't watch the broadcast, well then, thanks for watching the replay.